Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and today I want to talk Zetas, and I want to give a shout out to Exonix. We were having a discussion in my members only section of the Discord, and Exonix asked me, would I rather get all of the era units to gear 12, but I get the Zetas, or get them to gear 13, no Zetas? And me and, Shitstorm chimed in too, because we both kind of were like, we'll take them all at relic levels, like we don't need the Zetas. And neither of us need Zetas. Now, he's much more whalish than I am, but neither of us need Zetas because we've played the game for so long. You have plenty. Zetas aren't enough of a problem for us because we played the game at a time where a bottleneck was a lot worse than Zetas. I remember where by the time that I would get a character from 0 to 7-star, relic them for whatever relic level, I'd accumulate more than enough Zetas for them and their team. It just wasn't a big problem. Obviously, now things have changed. It's faster to gear characters. There's light speed tokens, light speed bundles. There's all sorts of things that make it a lot easier to get characters to relics, and that has left us starved for Zetas in a lot of areas. And I'm going to kind of explain how you can adjust your resources to combat that Zeta bottleneck, and just show you how quickly you can actually increase the Zetas you get without having to spend money. And we will show, for those of you who do spend money, we will yell at you a little bit to be smarter with your resources. So let's get in here and let's talk Zetas. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to kind of explain here is that I'd say the two groups of players that are starving for Zetas. It's the players who are moving through the game at an alarming rate just because they are, they have access to so much more gear, everything else, and Zetas are becoming a problem. So you have those players. You could be free to play, whatever. In those cases, when it's just you're moving naturally through the game, there's going to be some stuff here that's going to be easier and some stuff that will be harder. For players where you're in this position because you bought a lot of light speed bundles, you spend all your money on bundles. I talk about this a lot. You moved your, gear timeline up to here, right? Your gear timeline is here, but your Zeta timeline is all the way back here because you didn't buy Zeta. Most bundles didn't come with Zetas. And if you were going after the Galactic Legend ones, those did not come with Zetas. So you moved all your gear up here, but you kept your Zetas back here. So if you're someone that was spending money on bundles, I'm going to tell you that if you're not buying the episode pass, you're doing it wrong. There's 10 Zetas a month up here, which doesn't sound like a lot, but there's also droid brains, arrow magnifiers, impulse detectors, and Gerda keypads. Now, why is that significant? We'll talk about it later, but think Mark III raid currency. So if you were spending money on these bundles, but not spending money on Zetas, that's part of the reason you're in this situation. Now, if you're free to play, whole different ballgame, right? For both groups of players, what I will say is if you're at that point where it's really starting to become a problem, where you're relicking characters and they're not doing you any good because they don't have Zetas, pause. Almost stop building journey guide stuff and just work on upgrading what you currently have. Bring Kylo and his team to Relic 8. Bring, your Jabba and his team to Relic 8. Brings, upgrade relic levels. Bring people up. Spend some time investing extra relics or mods or something into the characters that you have Zetas on. And in that time, you will have accumulated Zetas to then work on your next project. Kind of split your focus that way, and I think you will be very successful. I think you'll be able to progress your account, especially in this world of Relic Delta. Maybe having some extra relics when you're lower level, taking that pause, build those extra relics up, could be very beneficial in Grand Arena and Territory Wars. So, I know that doesn't solve it completely because you're like, oh, it's still, time. I get it, but that's kind of the problem with Zetas. It's primarily a time bottleneck. The longer you play the game, the more Zetas you're going to get. There's only so many ways you can get more of them in this game. It's just the unfortunate truth. But there are two major ways you can get more Zetas without spending money and necessarily trying to completely change everything about the game, because the game has changed, right? There's changes that have been made to make this easier. So the first area is the weekly shipments. You can buy 5 Zetas for 1,250 crystals. Now that's going to sound like extortion, and people are going to get all mad at me and say that's so much, it's way too much. This is what I'd argue is like the market price for Zetas. Like I feel that's a very fair price for Zetas. I don't think that's unreasonable because you're paying an availability tax. There's not a lot of ways to get them, so you're going to pay more for the ones you can get. The thing is with Zetas, when you think about them just kind of high level here, right? There's something that, again, once they're equipped to a character, it's done. Some characters need 20, some characters need 40, every which way, you get the idea. When these are your bottleneck, it can be disastrous. And I know that, like I said, I was going somewhere and then I stopped because I didn't like the direction we were heading there. So what I'm getting at here, the 1250 crystals, it sounds like a lot, but you don't go and compare it to, say, the price of flawed signal data. Because if your bottleneck is Zetas, if you're looking at me saying, Phil, I could Relic 9 my Balin and his team before I could get all of their Zetas. There are some people who are probably in that position. Then signal data doesn't mean as much to you. The Zeta is more important. So the value of the Zeta comparative to something else is irrelevant. If it's 250 crystals, it's worth a purchase because that's the market rate for the Zeta. So this concept sometimes I think really kills players where they think this isn't as efficient because there's a better way to use crystals. But we've talked about this. Being efficient only matters when it's benefiting you. If I need to get somewhere in an hour and it's 55 miles away and my car is more fuel efficient if I go 50 miles an hour, well, I'm not going to get there in time. So I'm being inefficient because I need to get there at the proper time. So I might even go faster than the speed limit in order to get there within that hour. So I'm more efficient with my time. The fuel efficiency becomes irrelevant if I need to get there in an hour. The same thing with Zetas and, however else you would spend your crystals. Being efficient doesn't matter if you're stuck on Zetas. If you're just, buying flawed signal data that you're not really using, or you're buying Kyrotech that you're not using, buy the Zetas. 1250 crystals, let me just break down for you how easy it is to save that in a week. So again, we'll pull up our weekly shipments here and let's pull up our calculator. So in the calculator here, 1250 divided by 7 is 178 crystals a day. Now that doesn't sound like, you're like, okay, Phil, that's a lot, right? Well, think about regular energy, mod energy, fleet energy. It's 150 crystals, or it's 50 crystals for each refresh, and you can do 3 of them. So it's 150 available each time, and if you do all 3 of those, it's 450 crystals. So even if you just cut out one of those refreshes for mod, regular, and fleet energy in a week, you're going to have enough bonus crystals left over to afford this with plenty of room to spare. And for some of you, I know there's a bunch of players in this position where you don't really need to be doing refreshes of regular energy. You get 240 regular energy every single day. You get 135 of it in your refreshes, right? At game resets and stuff. You get 135 of it there. You get 100 on the web store. You get so much regular energy that you probably don't need to do nearly as many refreshes as you have been, right? Because you're just getting shards that aren't really helping you. So you've got plenty of extra crystals available now, and especially with all of these lightspeed tokens that have been handed out and the ones that are coming, you're going to have a lot less shards you need to farm. You're going to have a lot less gear you're going to need to farm. Those bonus crystals can be spent on Zetas without a lot of problems. So I highly recommend doing this. The final example I'll use here, and then we'll move on, is think of my family. We own a minivan and we own a truck. Let's say I take my truck to the mechanic and it's going to cost $1,250 to get new tires on the truck. And let's say it's going to cost $450 to get new tires on the van. Well, if my van doesn't need new tires for 3 years, the cost of those tires is irrelevant. I shouldn't be being like, hey, honey, I'm not going to get tires on the truck because they're $1,250. We're going to spend $450 and get tires for the van. So those are going to sit in my garage for 3 years, take up space. My wife's going to get pissed off because there's going to be tires in there and it's going to smell like rubber and everything else. So that's already not worth it. But Now my truck isn't operating efficiency. It's not safe anymore. It's sliding all over the road. Maybe I get in an accident. Like, it's not doing what I need it to do because it doesn't have the tires. So the comparative cost becomes irrelevant when need is involved. So obviously don't go and spend crazy crystals trying to get Zetas, right? Like, keep it at that 250, but comparing it to something else doesn't make sense when you're bottlenecked by Zetas. So there's your crystal aspect. The next one here is Mark III raid currency. Now remember, I talked about the episode pass, where it's giving you error magnifiers and impulse detectors, Gerda keypads. If you are buying that episode pass every month, you're getting a fair amount of resources in the pass that, take up these materials, that you could be able to put that into buying Zeta materials. It's not a bad idea. That could be a very wise purchase for a lot of players. Especially if you're in the early game where you really don't need error magnifiers and impulse detector or keypads. If you're buying the episode pass, great. Now let's say you're free to play. Zeta materials are still a brilliant purchase with Mark III raid currency. Again, comparative cost becomes irrelevant when need is involved. So let's just use an example here of, someone like the Zeta cost, right? It's 1,175 currency, right? Now, that's a lot, and that's more expensive than Gerda keypads, error magnifiers, and it's more expensive than those things. But just think, the amount of error magnifiers, Gerda keypads, and impulse detectors you need is not that much, and especially early on in the game. If you think your first 3 things I've always recommended farming that take relic 8s, Executor, Jabba, and Leia, that is a total of 4 relic 8s, 2 for Executor, 1 for Jabba, 1 for Leia. There's 4. I don't know why I was counting like that. That was freaking weird. So you're looking at 80 error magnifiers, 80 impulse detectors. So if you just do the error magnifiers is 200 per piece, multiply by 80, and impulse detectors are 265 multiplied by 80. Let me share my calculator here. So there's a calculator. So it's 16,000 of impulse detectors, 21,000 of error magnifiers. So if you add those two together, oops, that was 1,600. There, 37,200 total currency for your first 3 areas that you would probably spend Relic 8 on. For perspective, if your guild is in the Order 66 raid right now, and let's say you get the 41 million crate. There's 2,000 Mark III raid tokens there. Right? There's 2,000 there. If you divide this by 2,000, it's 18.6, right? So call it 19 raids. If you do 19 raids, you will get all the materials you would need for Jabba, Leia, and Executor. Now you take that 18 and say, okay, well that's 18 raids. You get 4 raids a week. You're looking at not even 5 months, right? But remember, that's 5 months straight of only buying impulse detectors and error magnifiers. It's going to take you more than 5 months to get Executor, Jabba, and Leia. So in that time, because you don't have to buy it all at once, you can use those additional crystals. You can use that additional resources on Zeta materials. Which I don't know that everybody kind of thinks through that process, but that's the truth of it. You don't need to buy all of that all at once. You can spend it on some Zetas. So you say, oh, well, 2,000 crystals, I can't even get a Zeta a week. That's not helping me. It's nothing crazy, right? Absolutely. It's not crazy, right? But as you start to get further in the raid, that number starts to become more significant. That number starts to get really, really big. So just for perspective there. And I want to go back to Exonix, who was the, shout out to Exonix, who was kind of the, inspiration for this. So they are in Allies of the Force. So we search for Allies of the Force. Come on, did I spell it right? I know I could find this guild earlier. There it is. So they get the max crate. And just to show you that Exonix is here, there's Exonix. And if we go to their unaligned Force users, and I noticed a gap in their roster, so I want to share. So Malicos, Balin, Shin, Merrick are all without Zetas. Obviously, that's not ideal. You don't want that. And Seer Junda is too. So there's 10 total Zetas that they're missing in their account. Now, their guild gets the max crate in the raid. Right? They get max crate in the raid. An endgame account. Now, you say, well, Phil, I'm not endgame. But again, we're just trying to help you as best as we can, guys. There's only so much you can do in the early levels. But at the max crate, you get 8,770 points. In the personal box, you end up getting enough to get 10,000 Mark III raid tokens if you max crate, which I'm assuming that's what you're doing. So if we come back here, right, get our handy dandy calculator out because I'm a nerd. You do the, and let's scroll down a little bit so you guys can maybe see the cost of the Zetas. You do that 11,000, you do 10,000 points that you can get, the max points, divided by 1175. That's 8.5 Zetas. So we're gonna round and call that 8 Zetas. You can also get 5 from weekly shipments, so we'll add in those 5. Now you're at 13 Zetas a week. Now to get 10 full Zetas, you need 20 mats, so that's 200. So now we take the 200, we divide that by 13, and you're looking at 15 weeks, so 4 months. So now, in 4 months of spending raid rewards and weekly shipments, Exonix would be able to get the Zetas they need for Seer, Malicos, Shin, Merrick, and Balin. They'd be able to get all of those Zetas, right? I think it's the right math. I don't know if it's 10 or, did I do that math right? Is it 10? You need 3 for Balin, 3 for Malicos, 1 for Shin, 1 for Merrick, 2 for Seer. Yeah, 10 Zetas. So yeah, did the math right. So in 4 months, they earned all the Zeta materials they would need for those characters. That's not including Fleet Arena, the fleet challenges, assault battles, territory wars, Grand Arena. That's literally just raid rewards and weekly shipments. That's how you beat the Zeta Bottleneck. It's thinking of all those areas that you can get extra and going for it. Now, again, like I said, I understand that not everybody's getting a max crate where you're going to be able to do that. But that's where you have to take those other measures. So you have to take those other precautions. Start working on some of those teams. Start looking at weekly shipments. Take advantage of all of these journey guide lightspeed tokens, as you can. Take as much advantage of that as you can. Think about the Zetas you're going to need right now versus ones you might not need to equip. Like a very popular example, Commander Tano. Unless you have Jedi Master Kenobi, the only Zeta you need on her is the unique. The other 2 are not necessary until you get Kenobi. So sometimes just delaying the equipping of a Zeta until it's necessary for your account is another great way to solve this problem. So I hope this was helpful for you, because I think a lot of players just feel very discouraged thinking about Zetas, not recognizing that, again, like I said, that comparable cost is irrelevant when there's a need. If you need Zetas, you gotta buy them. It doesn't matter that it costs more than flawed signal data. It's what you need right now. Zetas can help you today. May as well make that purchase. And as I showed in the raid, very quickly those add up. Even if you're just going for, say, again, go back to one of the earlier raid crates. Let's go to, let's go to that 40 million crate where you're getting 2,000 Mark III, and at 40 million you're scoring like 800,000. So add another 80, 160, 200, 240, 280. So, call it like 220 or 280. You can get almost another 2 Zetas a week from the Order 66 raid. Again, it doesn't sound like it's groundbreaking, right? Sorry, there's the math to show you that, an extra 2 Zetas. It doesn't sound like it's groundbreaking, but it's better than nothing, right? And it can maybe help jumpstart you to getting through that Zeta bottleneck faster because you started earlier. It's kind of like kind of like an investment. You start doing it now when, you don't have as much to spend, but you start investing now, and you've grown and you've grown and you've grown. You start getting to that point where it's easier and easier for you. So that's the video on Zetas, folks. I know it's a lot of math and a lot of like, oh, well, what if I'm here and here? But I think you understand what I'm trying to say there. That weekly shipment is well worth it, in my opinion. And with the way the game has gone, where it's easier to get gear, you don't need as much of your crystals to go towards Kyrotechs and, mods and like some of those other things. You don't need your crystals to go there as much as you may need it for Zetas. Love you guys. May the force be with you. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.